Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Social Z Franchise Happy Hour. I'm the host, Calvin Smith, coming from Destin, Florida, as always, and I'm very excited. We have two amazing women entrepreneurs with us, Lisa and Shaniqua, both from the great state of New Jersey, I guess, and they're going to be telling us a little bit about their path to how they became entrepreneurs, how they got into franchising, and then really we're going to open up the dialogue and let them share their experience and have a conversation about the unique position of being a woman in the franchising world. So Lisa and Shaniqua, welcome.
Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you so much, Calvin.
So to kick us off, what I'll ask each of you to do is just give us a 60-second sort of intro of who you are, your business, your brand, and anything else you want to share. Lisa, you want to kick us off?
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. I am the CEO of Milestone Franchising. I am a certified franchise consultant. I'm a member of the IFPG, which is the International Franchise Professionals Group. And I am a matchmaker for people that are interested in becoming a franchise owner. And I was also a franchise owner myself for 7 years of a direct mail piece called Birthday Pack. And my territory was Central New Jersey and Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And I turned into the consulting world when in March 2020, unfortunately, our system collapsed. And I was one of the first owners of an emerging franchise, and I helped train and mentor a lot of the people that came in after me. And I really love to educate people about franchising. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I love to get more women involved in franchising on top of that and let them know that this is something that they can do. So that is me.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. And Shaniqua, give us your introduction.
Hi, good evening. I'm Shaniqua Wilson. I am owner of Blue Moon Estate Sales, Union County franchise. I am the first and sole franchise in New Jersey, so I have flexibility to work outside my territory right now until another person joins me. So prior to this, I spent 25 years in the airline industry. Last year during the COVID pandemic, I saw my job be one among the many that disappeared. So I started to think, what can I do next? And I worked with an executive coach, and we started exploring franchises, and I ultimately landed on Blue Moon franchise for a number of reasons. And, maybe we'll get into that later. I'm not sure. But I enjoy it, and I am loving every minute of it. So I agree. I wish more women would just jump out there and get into the franchise world.
Thanks, Shaniqua. And before we really dive into the conversation, you mentioned that you had spent 25 years in the airline industry. Most of those with the same company, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was Continental Airlines initially, and then during the merger, I stayed on with United Airlines. So it was about half and half.
So 25 years, and then one day they just said, thanks for the time. Was that the conversation?
It wasn't that bleak, but I was fortunate to be in many different divisions, operational divisions, administrative divisions, and ultimately I landed in HR. So the last half of my career was in human resources, specifically talent acquisition. So I think that set me up nicely to understand what to keep an eye out as I started my career journey further, and which ultimately led me to become an entrepreneur rather than pursuing another corporate role.
And that brings up an interesting conversation, and I'll let you two take it from here. But it sounds like at that point in your life you were ready to do something different, and it's that's a lot of what Lisa does now is find when people are ready to take that leap. It sounds like, Lisa, you're able to help guide them to the right decision and find a good fit for them. Is that what your responsibility and what your business is now?
Yeah, and also to even understand whether or not business ownership is something that they should be pursuing, because it's not for everybody. And I like to say that I give the Jersey scared straight version of business ownership. And if I don't hear from them again, I take no offense. But it's not for the faint of heart. And especially today, we still have a lot of issues that are facing us as business owners, and we don't know what's around the corner. So making people aware that there's never been a better time, truly, but there are definite, pitfalls around the corner that, are going to still be with us for a while, and, just being aware of that and being pragmatic. But yes, helping people to understand what's going to get them up and out of bed every day and do this job, and then rinse and repeat and do it again and again for the life of the contract that you hold, which could be up to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Shanequa, did you work with a consultant, or did you have a coach or a guide, someone like Lisa, that helped you land where you are, or what was your path to ending up at Blue Moon?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked with an executive coach, and, it was very low pressure, which was great. There was no time limit to say you have to pick something by XYZ date. I went through a number of franchise opportunities before I made a decision. And, no matter how much research and preparation you do, it's still a very scary situation. You come from a semi sense of security, right? Working for a large organization, a corporation, that, given normal circumstances, you'll get a paycheck. Coming into the entrepreneurial world, I am my paycheck. So that part of it, and that continues to get me out of bed. But the franchise itself is also something that I've enjoyed so far, and that, helps me get out of bed even quicker.
And Shanequa, what was it in the conversation and that had you land on Blue Moon? What was what were the other brands that you looked at? Why did you not buy those? And what was the unique thing about Blue Moon that made you land on it?
Yeah, so I looked at concessions type franchise. I also looked at house flipping, so the We Buy Ugly Houses franchise, and a few other ones. Ultimately, I didn't want to have to carry inventory, so that knocked a lot of franchises out of the running. I also didn't want to have a lot of complexity to how the franchise was run. So, like, for example, the house flipping franchise, you had to understand titles. You needed to make sure you had a good contractor on hand, things like that I didn't want to, have to learn, because I wanted something that was easy for me to, I guess, step in and kind of start building from there. And so, I had family members who were also affected by the pandemic and were out of work. And I saw this as an opportunity to build something with my family together. And, who doesn't love a good garage sale, right? And although I don't compare us to garage sales, I think of us more of the Nordstroms of garage sales. So, and my family members, they love flea market and things like that. So I thought this would be a good move. And as I was searching, this was the only franchise that offered medical insurance as part of a new owner. And so, again, that's another cost that, something that's typically available when you're in the corporate world. But as I was, out on my own, being a single person, benefits was something that was important to me. So the medical coverage was another deciding factor.
Yeah, that's a very big deal, Shanequa. Most franchises I've looked at, it's all on the individual, franchise owner, and it's a big cost, especially in those early days when you're not making any money anyway,
right,
and you've got to pay for health insurance and stuff. So yeah, awesome. And Lisa, before we dive into the main conversation here, hearing Shanequa's path to how she got to where she is, what role would you play in that conversation? And what, if someone's interested in, perhaps looking at this, how would they engage with you, and what would be your process to help them get from A to Z?
So great question. And I will tell you, I do love Blue Moon, and I do love the fact that they offer insurance. And that is one of the most unique things that I always look for in franchises, is what sets them apart. And not that it's trendy, but what sets them apart and what provides some sort of a need. And so they do both. And I love that. But yeah, when I work with my candidates, it's really understanding what it is that they're looking for, what it is that they want. And to Shaniqua's point, what is it that they don't want? So I have my candidates rate the industries that, the top main industries. I have like almost 30 of them. And I say to them, listen, if you don't like kids or you don't like pets, like I need to know that. It's okay. No one's judging here, but I can't sit there and put you with a pet concept and you meanwhile can't stand animals, because animal owners will smell that a million miles away, right? So what do you want and what do you not want? And then I give them something called a Zoracle assessment, which is a assessment similar to like a DISC assessment that helps to show what your core competencies are for business. And it's tailored to franchising specific. And I find it to be an incredible tool and very, very helpful. And then understanding what their economic situation is. And I liken it to real estate because everyone understands real estate. And I say, am I showing you a condo? Am I showing you a fixer-upper? Am I showing you a townhouse or a McMansion? Like, what am I showing you? And I can't understand that until we have that discussion, which is a very personal discussion to have, but one that is a requirement. And franchisors require me to provide what net worth is, what liquid capital there is. And without that, my hands are tied. So having that discussion and then showing them, I go back after really talking with them, I go back and find some concepts that I really believe are going to check off all those boxes, then have them meet at least 1 to 2 rounds with those concepts, because you don't know enough. And I meet with my candidates each and every time to understand, well, what did you like? What did you not like? What were questions that you had, etc. Then go to the next round. Well, Lisa, this one I can take off. I didn't like this at all. Okay, what didn't you like about it? And then you keep going through that whole process that entire time.
Awesome. And Lisa, as far as I understand, there's no cost to the actual potential franchise buyer. Is that right?
Great point that I always fail to mention. It is so key. And in New Jersey, we are so cynical, right, Shanequa? There's nothing for free in this world over here. But it truly is. We're overseen by the Federal Trade Commission, and it is an FTC rule that we do not accept any kind of payment from our candidates. And we are compensated by the franchisor if we place a candidate with them, and only at that time. And we're on their timeline. So if it takes a year, it takes a year.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I was skeptical too when I started working with the career coach. Because I'm like, it's free. Every meeting I was waiting to hear, okay, well, this is going to cost, and this is going to cost, but it never happened. And you're right. It was completely at my schedule, and it was free. The advice was absolutely fantastic.
Wonderful.
Awesome. So Lisa and Shanequa, one of the things that we talked about before that I would think would be a cool dialogue for the two of you, and I will obviously stay out of it because my opinion on this probably isn't very relevant. But, whenever I go to franchise conferences, and I go to them all the time, I've been to 3 this month, I think, or last month. Everyone in the room looks like me, but as you said, Lisa, just much older, right? A bunch of old white guys in the room. And that, I think that historically is who, has been, not necessarily entrepreneurs, but definitely franchise owners, in the United States. And, what I think would be a cool conversation is, how has that impacted you and your business dealings just as a franchise owner, or when you were going to buy a franchise, what brand you decided to buy, how much did that play a role? But really just, if you two could have a conversation about, that dynamic and your perspective on it, because, that's really what matters.
All right, I'll kick this off. I had no idea. I knew no one that owned a franchise. And my franchise, when I owned it, it literally came into my lap because it arrived in my mailbox. And I was at a crossroads in my career, and I dusted off my 10-year-old resume that had not been updated. And I said, hey, I'd really love this. It was a marketing concept, and my background's marketing. And I sent my resume and they called back. I think it was the next day, and I got so excited. And they said, we're not hiring, but this is going to be a franchise. Are you interested? And I remember distinctly wrinkling my nose and going, franchising? What? And my husband was like, that's a scam. And I'm like, no, franchising's not a scam. And he was like, And I'm like, no, it's been around forever. We just don't know anyone in it. That's all. And I said, if I don't pursue this, it's going to be a missed opportunity, because it literally did land in my lap. And so I went there with I don't know, I think it was close to 80 questions, and they answered everything, and they had been testing it. But what I've realized in all these years, close to 8 years that I've been in this world, is that people feel like it's some kind of secret society. It's some kind of closed off, you have to say some sort of password in order to get in. But it's really not like that. And yet it somehow feels that way. And people have had a seat at the table in franchising for so long, and they've been really doing exceptionally well in it for so long. And now it's time for everyone to be able to get a chance at something like this. What do you think, Shaniqua?
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason I chose to go the franchise route was more so for process. I knew I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't know where to start. So with a franchise, it comes along with processes and programs and things. So you're walking into almost complete business, right? And so I thought that just starting out, that would be easier for me to come in rather than trying to build from the bottom and work my way up. Because, Lisa, you hear a lot about startups and different things going on, especially in New Jersey. And you wonder if, like you said, is that a scam? We're so scam focused that we don't know where to turn. And so, the franchise opportunity for me brought a bit of, I guess, security in the sense that, if they're scamming a whole lot of other people than me, and which wasn't, of course, the case. And so it just felt easier for me to transition from a corporate world into a franchise rather than trying to build something from the bottom and not knowing where to start. And I just wanted something that I can launch quickly.
And to add to that, the reason that I loved it was because I'd been working from home well before it became the thing to do. And I couldn't go back into corporate America, into an office. I'd been working from home for 10 years. And back then, nobody was doing that. And it afforded me that whole flexibility and not having anyone breathing down my back. That was so important to me. And I could, I had young kids at the time, and I could sneak out and go to a Halloween parade or go read in the class, and no one was judging me, and I didn't have to show up 15 hours early to work so that I could make up for the 30 minutes that I just lost. And that was really important. But yeah, the freedom and the flexibility was everything for me when I came into this world. And it still is to this day for what it is that I'm able to do and be my own person.
Shaniqua, you said, you bought the franchise because of the processes. So did you know someone that was in the franchise space already? Did you have some level of experience with people in the franchise space, or did you do your own research, or how did you end up on that path of saying, hey, I know I want to buy a franchise because of these processes?
No, I didn't know anyone who was in the franchise world. I just understood how a franchise worked. And so, there was an assumption of, they would have these established processes in place. And if not very established, there would at least be some type of framework to help build the business.
Lisa, when you got the letter in the mail and started doing your due diligence on the brand that you ended up buying, what was the diversity dynamic then? I mean, were you the only, woman franchise owner, or what was the, I guess, setup there?
So I was one of the first franchise owners, and then after me, it was a pretty good mix because the franchise itself was more female. based. It was more female skewed, I guess you could say. So there did tend to be a good mix of women in our franchise, which I really, really love that. And I feel like Blue Moon is a lot of spouses, and it's a lot, same thing, because it just kind of speaks. So, you sit there thinking about there's different concepts that speak more to women. So then they're drawn more to that. But when I'm talking to my candidates, and I go, this might not be sexy, which is the biggest thing that everyone always says. And I go, but you know what's sexy? It's doing well. It did well during a pandemic. It's going to continue to do well. It's needs based. And the ROI is really strong. That's sexy, right? So I try to explain to women, don't focus on the fact that it might not be something that sounds all sizzly. It's okay. It's all right, right?
Sure. And Shanequa, what about you with Blue Moon, or maybe some of the other brands that you looked at? What's the general makeup of the franchisee, and are you generally the only person at your conferences or your meetings that looks like you, or what is the dynamic there?
No, I was pleasantly surprised that there's a great diversity mix, men and women. Lisa, hinted to the fact that there's a lot of families, so spouses. You have father-daughter duos. So it's pretty evenly split. And even in terms of, people who look like me, people of color, there's a lot of diversity throughout, which was good to see. I would expect it to be a lot of women, because women are the shoppers and women are the bargain shoppers at that when we can be. And so it was nice to see that there were a lot more men in the field than I thought it would be, especially coming from human resources. We were usually surrounded by lots of women. That's women dominated for the most part. And so it was good to get a little more mix of men into the fold.
And Lisa, what about with your clients? Are you seeing more women come into the conversation and seek out franchising at this point, or what's the mix there?
Oh, Calvin, that's one of my favorite things to talk about. So oftentimes the people that I start talking to are the men, and they're the people that will engage with me. And then I say to them, so do you have a partner or a spouse? And they go, yeah. And I go, so our next conversation, they need to be on that call. And they say, why? And I go, well, number one, this is a big decision. Number two, if you ever bought windows for your house, they make the husband and wife sit together, or the partners sit together, right? And I go, that's for buying windows for a house. This is buying a business. And they go, well, she's not going to have anything to do with it, right? And I go, not until I get a hold of her. And then when I start talking with them, I do direct a lot of the conversation to her, because all of a sudden that dynamic changes, and all of a sudden she's going, wait a second, you keep your corporate job. I want to go do this. Right? But she never thought about it before. I had a husband, wife in Utah, and she had lost her job due to the pandemic, and she had an incredible customer service background, and he had an incredible sales and marketing background. Complementary, right? Well, she's running the business with her husband now, but had I never brought her into that conversation, he would not have thought about it, and she would not have thought about it, and that would have just been how it would have been, and she would have gone back into the corporate space. I'm not responsible for their divorce, God forbid, a million times if that happens, but the good news is he's on the road a lot, and she's back at the office. But again, having that conversation with her to give her that confidence that, yeah, you can do this. Why can't you do this? It's one that I try to bring about on a regular basis.
Sure. Absolutely. In the brands that I interact with a lot, including the ones that I own, the most successful franchisees are generally husband and wife team, and it's generally the wife who is the driver. And my businesses are no different. My wife and I started our first franchise together, and she got tired of me messing things up, so she went and started her own brand as well. And she's doing phenomenal, and so you definitely see that whenever there's a strong woman in the leadership role. I think it brings a different mindset and complements things that us men really aren't very good at and don't see. So Shaniqua, for you, you mentioned you didn't know anyone, in the franchise space, but you can kind of do the process. Now that you're in it, obviously still young in the business, but having success, are your friends starting to ask about it? Are you starting to see some of your peer networks kind of think, hey, maybe we should, leave our jobs or, try something different, or, what's been the conversation with your friends and family now that you're a franchise owner?
Yeah, they are very much interested in learning more about it. Not yet to the point where they're thinking of leaving their jobs, but more so as, what if type situations. I think the market right now is a little bit scary for people to make changes unless they're forced to make a change, which was my situation. My job went away. So my options were kind of, okay, do you, take a job that's, they're combining two jobs into one, or they're undervaluing the pay for jobs. And, that situation was not something that I was desired to enter into. And so that's ultimately why, going out and working on my own was at the top of my priority list. So, right now, I think until we get to a more stable place, and people are not going to willingly be ready to just leave their sense of security that they have right now. But they are definitely asking more questions, inquiring, wanting to, learn more and get involved.
Couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap up. Lisa, for you and being on both sides, being a franchise owner and now being someone who connects, potential entrepreneurs to franchise businesses, what do you mentioned this earlier, that not everyone's cut out for entrepreneurship and to be a business owner. What are the things, if someone's listening to this and saying, hey, am I cut out for this? What are the absolute yeses and the absolute nos that you think kind of play into that?
So, excellent question. I would say that you have to be able to do exactly what we're doing right now. And I ask my candidates that. I go, if this is making you squirm, sitting here having this conversation right now, you really need to think again, because so much of franchising is business development, and it is going out and putting yourself out there and getting business. And if you try, and I watched this with my franchise, people would sit at home in their jammies and do nothing and then go, why don't I have any business? And I'd say, because you haven't gone out and done anything. So you have to, you're the brand ambassador. You're the person. You're it. You're naked and you're alone and you're it. And you've got to go do it. And that's the most important piece. So then the other pieces that come into it are being able to hire and fire, which Shanequa has, knowing how to do a budget and having familiarity with numbers. It's not the most critical thing, because you can hire a bookkeeper, you can have your CPA, but have a good understanding of a P&L and a pro forma is helpful, definitely helpful. Having a general idea about marketing and understanding it, knowing that your franchise is going to provide you with a website and SEO and with social media, etc. But still having a little bit of an idea about it is always nice, right? So there's some areas that are nice, and then you can learn about them. And then the most critical one is the first one, is being able to put yourself out there. Put yourself out there, have a really strong stomach, know that you're going to have awful days that are just you're going to cry and pull your hair out, and you're going to wonder what you ever did to get yourself into this. And then all of a sudden you're going to have this high, and you're going to be looking way ahead and going, this was the greatest thing I ever did, right? So knowing that and steeling yourself for that. I woke up probably 4 months after I'd signed my contract with my franchise, and I'd lost a whole bunch of clients, like just no apparent reason, just happened. And I woke my husband up during the middle of the night. I was like, are you going to divorce me if this whole thing if this falls through? Anyway, you're lucky it's Saturday and you're going to be fine, and go back to sleep. And I was like, okay, all right. And everything was fine. And I had a great, thriving business for 7 years.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great insight, Lisa. Yeah, I think people underestimate sometimes how much the business development piece and networking and things like that, regardless of what your brand is, how important that is for sure. Shanequa, on that note, as you mentioned before, you had a long, successful career in the airline industry, different parts of that, that industry in different roles, and reached, a senior position, and then you became a business owner. What were the one or two things that really surprised you that you were not good at, that, you've learned over the past periods?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. So I would say, and it isn't relevant to what my past role was, but in my new role, I find that I'm not so good at pricing items or understanding the value of items. There's so many different types of wood that you need to understand, the different styles of furniture. I just didn't think about needing to know that level of information. And so, Lisa talked a lot about networking and, building your brand development. And I think that helped me because, I've always had to do some type of networking in my previous role. The difference is I was networking under a well-known brand, a respected brand. And now Blue Moon is new in this area. And so I'm basically, coming into the party uninvited, right? It's good that I am a part of a franchise because that gives me a little more credit and credibility in the environment, in the space. And so that's helped. But I can tell you, hearing no or not getting calls returned or people not answering, not responding, I'm okay with that, but I'm just not as good as accepting it because now, it's my business at stake, and so it's different when you have a large organization behind you that, it's easy to move on to the next one. But, just continue building my network itself and, promoting the business, educating the public on the business and what it is and who we are. And so that takes a lot of time. It's funny because doing this during COVID, in New Jersey, going in and out of different various states of mask required, mask not, optional, all these things, previously you would sit on a phone and cold call, right, to get clients, cold call. And now, people are not answering phones, maybe because they're not even in the office and they still have office numbers public. Right. And so even now that we're open and I'm out and pounding the pavement, as they say, I'm coming across different offices that have shut down. And so it's not so easy to have a listing of all of these potential lead opportunities and following up on them because they may no longer exist. And so it's adding another layer of complexity to it. But what I find is, the local chambers, local networking, one person can lead you to another. And I've been following that, and that has been working very well for me. So I have now learned how to build my network more strategically and kind of stay involved in things that I know are active.
Awesome. That's great insight, Shanequa. And yes, I think we all experience that discomfort of, being the elephant in the room to being the mouse, right? And, the awkward part where people really don't want to hear what you have to say or they don't return your phone calls. As Lisa said, you've got to be okay with that, and you've got to get comfortable with it, really, and kind of be okay to live in that for a while, for sure. Yeah, I definitely learned something more about your business. I didn't know, I didn't even think about if, a home was selling fast and they just needed to get rid of some of the, the fixtures or furniture, things like that, to call you. That's a great point. Well, Lisa and Shanequa, thank you both very much for your time. I applaud you both for taking the leap and being entrepreneurs and joining the franchise world. And, congratulations to you both for, building a business in the pandemic when most people have either struggled or gone the other direction. So great job to both of you, and thanks for joining us. And to the people that have taken the time to listen to Lisa and Shaniqua talk today. We appreciate you joining in on our podcast, and we hope to have you with us next time on the Social Z Happy Hour. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.